Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. We are presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live and Sports Visions 92.1 FM out of Columbus. As you can tell, because of my virtual background, this is a podcast that is dedicated to covering local sports in Columbus. And we got a lot to talk about. Going to talk about the Cleanstones, going to talk about Columbus State baseball and the Peach Belt Conference tournament, high school baseball playoffs, everything that you want as far as local coverage into the Fountain City. I got you covered. I'm also going to talk some national sports. Had a great weekend. I'm ready to talk sports here on this Monday. I'll even talk about the Kentucky Derby as Sovereignty ends up winning the 151st Kentucky Derby at Churchill Downs. I actually watched it, and I just don't understand why there's 7 hours worth of coverage for a sporting event that's only 2 minutes long. And I will also get into the internet sensation that has got the entire country just swept up in one of the biggest debates. Who would win in a fight between 100 men and one silverback gorilla? Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I got my thoughts on it. It's kind of funny and creative. But first, let's talk about the Cleanstones. They have a day off today. They will take on the Birmingham Barons for a 6-game series at Synovus Park starting on Tuesday. Now, they dropped 4 out of 6 against the Biloxi Shuckers, who are much improved from that road trip that the Cleanstones faced earlier in the season. I'm still impressed with the crowds at Synovus Park. I'm impressed with this team that is just got to get the bats going. And they do have the timely pitching, but right now, one of the top hitters in the Southern Baseball League is Ethan Workinger. And there is some box office stars that could be future Braves. And the Cleanstones is something that you want to do in the city of Columbus, is to go to Synovus Park. It's a great event. I was there for the opener. I have not been back since. I definitely want to go out to the ballpark to experience that. The food is outstanding. And just the atmosphere of Synovus Park. They're going to be building it up, I think. That they're probably going to be building some shops around Synovus Park. Such a great event. They're going to have the day off today, like I said. And then if you can't make it out to Synovus Park, you know that Sports Vision's 92.1 FM has got you covered as Jack Johnson on the call. I listened to him yesterday afternoon, and I tell you, the flow of the game and the knowledge and really painting the picture, that's what Jack Johnson does best. I enjoy listening to him on the broadcast. I also enjoy listening to Thrift Behringer, who filled in for him last Thursday, and he's going to have an opportunity to fill in once again, and that's great, because when we have somebody like Thrift that has all that experience of calling games, able to just fit in nicely, and the broadcast sounds amazing. That's really what it's all about. And I definitely support the Cleanstones. I want to try to follow them as much as I can and talk about them as much as I can on this podcast. Like I mentioned, had a pretty busy weekend. Of course, it was my drill weekend for the National Guard. I'm gearing up to be gone for about a month in the month of June. But, it was also in the afternoon. I sat down and I watched 7 hours of footage of the Kentucky Derby. And let me tell you something. I know that this is my podcast, and there's a lot of sports that I do talk about on this podcast. And I also, talk about some of the sports that you may not like. I mean, I like the golf, especially the majors. I don't really talk that much about NASCAR unless it's the Daytona 500, and I'll mention who won the Daytona 500. Not really much into tennis. I know when the Grand Slams happen, if there's an American like Coco Gauff or John Isner, who played at the University of Georgia, yeah, I could definitely get into them. But here's the thing. It's my show, and I love horse racing, especially when you can get behind a horse that could possibly win the Triple Crown. They say it is the most exciting 2 minutes in all of sports. Churchill Downs, that's where it was at. It was a little soggy, the rain, and they got all those horses in that stable, and they were off. I saw the 2 minutes down the stretch. Sovereignty ends up winning the Kentucky Derby. 7 hours of footage, though. They had some races leading up to the Kentucky Derby. There were some celebrities, who's who there. The favorite, he was a 7-2 favorite, Journalism, actually finished second behind Sovereignty. And now all eyes are on the Preakness. If Sovereignty is going to win the Preakness, then the casual sports fan is going to tune into the Belmont Stakes because, yeah, the last time we had a Triple Crown winner was in 2018 with Justified. Before that, in 2015, we had American Pharaoh. There's been some horses that have been close, winning the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness, and they had an opportunity to win the Belmont Stakes. But remember, the Belmont Stakes is a much larger track. It's a greater distance, and some of these horses are not geared up for it. One fun fact is that every single horse, they had 19 horses that raced in the Kentucky Derby, all descendants of Secretariat, who won the Triple Crown in 1973. Yeah, I know my horse racing. I know that Seattle Slew won the Triple Crown in 1978, and before that it was affirmed in 1977. So there was a huge gap from 1978 all the way to 2015 where we didn't have a Triple Crown winner. But since we've had 2 Triple Crown winners since then, I know that is captivating. And what can I say? I love horse racing. I think it's one of those sporting events that I can watch with my kids because my kids love animals, and showing them on TV. Hey, look, those are horses. They're racing. That's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, so the Kentucky Derby happened. Great event that first weekend in May. Yesterday was Star Wars Day. Today is Cinco de Mayo. I'm just continuing to truck along here on this show, episode 988. Also going to get into the Braves taking 1 out of 3 against the Dodgers as they take on the Cincinnati Reds later. NBA playoffs. We have got the round 2 matchups, and every single matchup in the NBA playoffs is something special. The WNBA is back. The regular season's going to start in a couple of weeks as we had the Indiana Fever who were televised, and Caitlin Clark went back to her alma mater at the University of Iowa. But I do want to switch gears and talk about the internet sensation that has swept the country, the biggest debate that's going on. Look, 2018, we all remember Laurel Yanni. Remember, you play the Laurel Yanni. People have a different pitch. Some people think it's Yanni. Some people think it's Laurel. Yeah, that swept 2018. I remember that. This debate is so captivating because, first of all, it's hypothetical. Would 100 men defeat one silverback gorilla? And I do have an answer for this. It just depends on the strategy of the 100 men. If they all work as a team, they could get it done. But if you just stick 100 men and you go attacking that silverback gorilla, at least 20 of those men are going to get slaughtered within the first couple of minutes. But the stamina of the men, because you might have some men reserved in the back, the key is to tire out the gorilla, because the gorilla does not have the stamina of 100 men. 100 men actually have the mind, and they're able to strategically try to defeat this gorilla. But also the big question is, which 100 men are we talking about? Are we talking about like mixed martial art fighters, karate champions, bodybuilders, former NFL players? What are we talking about? Are we talking about just regular men like myself? Like, if you got 100 versions of me trying to defeat this gorilla, the gorilla wins, because I would probably just get slaughtered. I would try to go after that gorilla, and that gorilla would just tear me into pieces. But we're talking about maybe like a Conor McGregor or a Mike Tyson in his prime, like some world-class fighters that know how to attack this gorilla. But you got to remember, the gorilla has a 12-inch skin, so you cannot penetrate the skin. And also, the gorilla has 15 times the weight. They can actually bench press. If a gorilla is actually lifting weights, they actually can lift 15 times their body weight. You got to remember, this gorilla, 400 to 500 pounds, massive. But I was watching all these videos. I was so fascinated by this debate because you had gorilla experts talking about, yeah, I could see a situation where the 100 men can actually defeat the gorilla. But also, a gorilla normally does not get provoked. We're not talking about like a King Kong Hollywood scene where the gorilla is pumping on his chest and he is just slaughtering men left and right. I saw some of the AI videos of this. And first of all, this is all hypothetical. I could never see a situation where we even try this. It's idiotic to even think about that, but it's a debate that's kind of been a little fun. I mean, this is really the internet sensation of 2025. Last year it was Cat Williams or the Hawk-Tua girl. Now this year, it's all about 100 men versus one silverback gorilla. Got off topic a little bit on that. Before we take a break, I do want to let everybody know that we do have some events coming up on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We do have some baseball playoffs that's going on. On Wednesday, Thrift and I are going to be at Patterson Field in Montgomery for the AISA championship between Lakeside School and Patrician. Coach Tony Rasmus has requested that Georgia Alabama Sports Live able to live stream this. So we will be there. And then we will travel up to Prattville for the AHSAA 3A semifinal game between Glenwood and the number 1 overall seed, Prattville Christian. That game's 1 and 2 will be on the NFHS network. Thursday, kind of up in the air. I know it's my kid's field day at Glenwood, but we also have possibly some baseball playoffs. Friday, we're going to have the first round of the GIAA baseball playoffs. We also have GIAA soccer. Those brackets should be out any minute now. By the time I get this show on the air, the brackets might already been released. So we do have Brookstone, Calvary, and Pacelli all in the GIAA playoffs. Glenwood is the only team remaining in the other AHSAA, GHSA. They're the only team remaining in the 16 schools that we cover, with the exception of the GIAA schools. Central lost to Fairhope. Auburn lost to Enterprise. And I was on the call for all 3 games in the second round of the GHSA 2A state playoffs between Columbus and Crisp County. Crisp County was able to win that winner-take-all game 3, and so they will be in the quarterfinals where they will face Pierce County. So a lot more to get to. Let's go ahead and take our first break. When we come back, I'm going to break down the NBA playoffs. The Golden State Warriors get it done in another road game 7, and they get ready to take on the Timberwolves. I will preview the second round matchups in the NBA playoffs. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Back after this.
Help protect your family from flu this season by taking 3 easy steps. First, get yourself and your family a flu shot. It's quick and can protect you all season. Second, take everyday actions to help prevent the spread of germs like flu. Cover your cough, stay home from work or school if you're sick, and wash your hands often. Third, there are drugs that can treat flu illness. These work best when started early. Learn more at cdc.gov/fightflu.
Welcome back here to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live and Sports Vision's 92.1 FM. NBA playoffs, we had a Game 7 last night in Houston. The Golden State Warriors were able to defeat the Houston Rockets 103-89 on the road. Another Game 7 road victory for the Golden State Warriors. Recently, a couple years ago, they went into Sacramento and they won Game 7. And this is what the Warriors do with that championship experience. They were able to get the job done. And you know that the Warriors were not going to blow a 3-1 series lead like they did in the 2016 NBA Finals. They were led by Buddy Hield's 33 points. Even Draymond Green had 16 points. And I think that this Warriors team, even though they got by the inexperienced Rockets team, they had a very good regular season. I just don't know if they've got that closer, that type of player that can get a bucket at any moment. Jalen Green is a very good player. Fred VanVleet has got that championship experience, winning a ring with Toronto. But this Golden State Warriors team was poised to get out of the first round. And I picked the Warriors as a 7th seed to beat the number 2 seed Houston Rockets. Now, the Rockets are going to be fine. They are a young team that's going to be back. I do think they need to get another piece if they want to be considered a championship team. But Ime Udoka has done a great job with the Houston Rockets. But I tell you what, I mean, you had Steph Curry, 22 points. Jimmy Butler, what an acquisition he's been for the Golden State Warriors, 20 points. Now, only got 3 points from their bench. Their bench is going to be their Achilles heel when they take on the Minnesota Timberwolves in the second round. Meanwhile, earlier that day yesterday, we had game 1 of the second round matchup in the Eastern Conference as Indiana was able to defeat Cleveland 121-112 on the road. Cleveland was without Darius Garland, but it was Andrew Nembhard who had 23 points for the Indiana Pacers. Donovan Mitchell, is he not a superstar? He's really been the catalyst for the Cleveland Cavaliers all year, 33 points. But I was surprised. A team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have a guy like Evan Mobley, who is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year, a team that is committed to defense, ended up giving up 121 points. Now, I think the Cavaliers bounce back. I think they get game 2. Hopefully, Darius Garland will be back. But I think this is going to be a long series. The Pacers, who got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, I think they match up very well with Cleveland. But I do think that you got a closer like Tyrese Halliburton. I cannot believe the Sacramento Kings got rid of him. Tyrese Halliburton, not only is he an NBA superstar, he's an Olympian, and he is one of the top point guards in the NBA. So, yeah, excuse me for being a little salty being a Kings fan, thinking, I can't believe they got rid of Tyrese Halliburton. It was tough, but, they actually got Domantas Sabonis in that trade. But it all worked out for both teams in hindsight. But the Indiana Pacers, remember, Benedict Mathurin, he's coming off the bench, came back from that injury. What a deal they made getting Pascal Siakam from the Toronto Raptors. I do think this Cleveland Cavaliers team has got depth as well. I mean, you look at some of their stars. You talk about Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, pretty good lineup. But I think that they were hurting without Darius Garland. I think that once he gets back, and I think that they'll be fine. And then the former Atlanta Hawk, DeAndre Hunter, actually came off the bench and scored 11 points. All right, so here's what we got going on today. Starting at 7 o'clock on TNT, it is game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals between the New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics in the Boston Garden. And this rivalry runs deep because it's Boston, it's New York. We've seen it with the baseball teams, with the Yankees and Red Sox. We've seen it in the Super Bowls between the Giants and the Patriots. And now these two rivals, they hate each other. Knicks fans can't stand Celtics fans, and Celtics fans can't stand Knicks fans. Do the Knicks have a fighting chance against the Boston Celtics, which I said are going to be the favorites to go back-to-back? This Boston Celtics team, even though they are older, they are more experienced, and all 5 starters can play defense. Now, I know Al Horford and Drew Holiday are getting up there in age, but when your 4th option is Derek White, you've got a very special team. I mean, where did they find this guy? He is over 30 years old. He was drafted by the San Antonio Spurs, and then all of a sudden he becomes not only an Olympian, but he becomes an all-star, and he is one of these players that is helped the Boston Celtics, and he's not even their 2nd or 3rd option. You got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. That is a dynamic duo that's tops in the league. Kristaps Porzingis, I know he's been injured most of the year. He was injured last year. The Celtics still won without him, and I think that you've got a guy like Peyton Pritchard, who is the 6th man of the year. Now, the coaching matchup, you got Tom Thibodeau and you got Joe Mazzulla. Now, Tom Thibodeau, he gets the most out of his players in the regular season. I think that Jalen Brunson needs to have a special game in order for the Knicks to win. I could see a scenario where the Knicks steal game 1, but Boston has got so much leadership. They know how to respond to any situation that you put in front of them. I think this Boston Celtics team, they grew a lot by winning the NBA Finals last season. They learned their lessons from reaching the NBA Finals in 2022, but they have players like Drew Holiday, who's been a great two-way player. The addition of Kristaps Porzingis, that just adds another offensive piece to their arsenal. And they're going to find a way to stop Jalen Brunson. It's going to be up to players like Karl Anthony Towns. Can he get 25 and 12? Can a player like OG Anunoby, who's been a pretty good defender, can he get some points? I think the Knicks have to play perfect in order for them to win this series. But I said in the beginning that the Celtics are either going to sweep or win in 5. This has been an absolute mismatch. I know Knicks fans are hopeful, and I would be too. They have not reached the Eastern Conference Finals since 1999 when they went to the NBA Finals as an 8th seed. That would be huge for the city of New York. They had their opportunity last year, and they blew it when they lost to the Indiana Pacers, but they were battling with injuries. Now this team, if they're fully healthy, can they match up against the Boston Celtics? Well, we'll find out later tonight. I think this is going to be a game where I'm really going to be sitting in front of the couch and watching this, or probably on my phone. But the Knicks and Celtics, this is really what the casual NBA fan wants to see, and what a great rivalry. This is going to be a great series. I still think Boston ends up coming out on top. Meanwhile, 9:30 on TNT in OKC, you got the Denver Nuggets, who had a gruesome 7-game series with the Los Angeles Clippers, and another disappointing series for the Clippers, and James Harden and Kawhi Leonard just not getting it done. The Denver Nuggets, with the best player in the NBA, Nikola Jokic, having Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., they have all the pieces around Jokic to win a championship. Even though this team is not as good as that team in 2023, I still think that the Denver Nuggets could steal game 1 against OKC. Remember, the Thunder won 68 games this year. They had an incredible regular season. But the factor is it rest versus rust? OKC had no problem against the Memphis Grizzlies and won it in 4 games. But the Denver Nuggets, they did not have a whole lot of rest leading up to this series. Can OKC take game 1 because they are the more refreshed team? I do think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could be the best player in this series, the type that can get a bucket. Can the Nuggets, who I think took a step back defensively the last couple of years, can they stop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Nikola Jokic is going to get his points, but when you have a player like Chet Holmgren, he's going to have to try to neutralize Jokic, which is easier said than done. I do think that OKC matches up well with the Denver Nuggets. I think this goes 7 games. I honestly think that the Oklahoma City Thunder do come out on top because they do have home court, but the Denver Nuggets are going to be right then and there. If the Nuggets can steal game 1, I think that they win all the games in Denver, and they possibly could win this series in 6. It's going to be tough to try to beat OKC in OKC, but this is going to be another exciting second-round matchup. And then I want to talk about the matches on Tuesday, starting with game 2. The Indiana Pacers taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think the Cavaliers, if they get Darius Garland back, they bounce back and they win that game, and it goes 1-1 back to Indianapolis. And then finally, 9:30 on Tuesday, we got the Golden State Warriors taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Can the size that Minnesota was able to exploit that Lakers team in the first round, can they do the same with a Golden State Warriors team that doesn't really have a lot of size? They have Draymond Green, they have Kayvon Looney. Jonathan Kuminga has really been an afterthought. That size of Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and Julius Randle could be the difference. And then Anthony Edwards, if he can outduel Steph Curry, if Anthony Edwards drops 38 to 40, it's over because the Warriors don't play defense, and Anthony Edwards is a type that can get a bucket at any time. I think that the age and the experience of the Golden State Warriors might run its course in this series. I do think because the Warriors are an old team, the Timberwolves have been there before. They got to the Western Conference Finals last year. I think that the Timberwolves end up winning this series in 5 or 6 games. The T-Wolves have the home court. The Warriors don't play that well on the road. I think that the Timberwolves will end up winning this series. So it's probably going to set up for either a Timberwolves Thunder Western Conference Finals or a Timberwolves Nuggets Western Conference Finals, which would be the rematch of the Western Conference semifinals last year, where the Timberwolves ended up taking Game 7 in Denver. So I want to see the Timberwolves in the NBA Finals. I think it would be a great NBA Finals if it's the Celtics and the Timberwolves, which I think the Celtics would come out on top and they'd win their second straight NBA championship. But the Timberwolves just getting to the NBA Finals would be a great storyline for the Timberwolves fan base that went through all those first-round exits with Kevin Garnett in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then they finally end up getting over the hump and getting to the Western Conference Finals because they have a superstar in Anthony Edwards. I know they traded away Karl Anthony Towns, which was the overall number one pick and one of their superstars. But to get a player like Julius Randle, it's not much of a downgrade for the Timberwolves. So I'm so excited about the NBA playoffs. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the NHL playoffs because we had some incredible Game 7s in the first round of the NHL playoffs, starting with the Winnipeg Jets, who ended up defeating the St. Louis Blues in double overtime as they advance to the second round. Now, the Jets are the former Atlanta Thrashers. It makes me sick to my stomach that the Winnipeg Jets are winning because I was a huge Thrashers fan. I was absolutely devastated when the Thrashers left for Winnipeg in 2011. It has the same feel of Atlanta Flames fans in the 80s when the Flames left Atlanta to go to Calgary, and then Calgary ended up winning a Stanley Cup final in 1989. I'm telling you, it's just a sick feeling because I remember those players for the Thrashers like Ilya Kovalchuk, Marian Hossa, Zach Bogosian, Evander Kane. Some of them would go on to be players in the Winnipeg organization, and it still hurts to this day. Meanwhile, on Saturday, how about the Dallas Stars coming back from a 2-goal deficit to defeat the Colorado Avalanche 4-2 to advance to the second round? And now we've got second-round matchups in the NHL playoffs. The defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers are going to be taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, as a historian, somebody that really roots for historic teams that haven't really had much success, the Toronto Maple Leafs is one of the original 6 in the NHL. I would love to see the Maple Leafs end up getting the Stanley Cup. If they win the Stanley Cup, it would be huge for the city of Toronto. And, they got a superstar in Austin Matthews. And I'm rooting for Toronto, but you can never count out the champions. Like Rudy T says, the Florida Panthers, who won their first ever Stanley Cup last year. I think they end up winning this series. On Tuesday, we got the Hurricanes taking on the Washington Capitals in Game 1. We all know about the historic season that Alexander Ovechkin had, breaking the goal-scoring record by Wayne Gretzky. He's already got a Stanley Cup, but maybe this is where the city of Washington goes on a run like they did when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup back in 2018. The Nationals won the World Series in 2019. You got the Commanders that went to the NFC Championship. Probably not. The Wizards are terrible. The Nationals are terrible. It's probably not going to happen. If you're a Capitals fan, I think that they feel they are the better team and that they should win the series. I mean, you look at what the Capitals did this season. I'm thinking, yeah, because they had the best record in the Eastern Conference. I know that Winnipeg won the President's Cup, but I think that the Washington Capitals are the favorites to represent the Eastern Conference and go to the Stanley Cup final. So that game is going to be on Tuesday. We also have the runners-up from last year, the Edmonton Oilers, led by their superstar Connor McDavid. They are going to be taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. Remember, a couple years ago, Vegas ended up winning the Stanley Cup. Remember, they got to the Stanley Cup final as an expansion team. And the city of Vegas it's great when all these teams have had success. When I talked about the Vegas Golden Knights, I said this on my podcast. When the Vegas Golden Knights won the Stanley Cup, it was as big of a moment. Got the WNBA team, the Las Vegas Aces, who won 2 straight WNBA titles, but you also have UNLV basketball winning the national championship back in 1990. The city of Vegas, they are sports fans, and they love their teams. And now you got the Vegas Raiders and soon the Vegas Athletics. It's really a fun time, especially being a hockey fan. On Wednesday, game 2 between Florida and Toronto, and then we got game 1 between the Dallas Stars and the Winnipeg Jets. These are in the Western Conference semifinals and the Eastern Conference semifinals. And get ready for some hockey action. It's going to be exciting. Let's go ahead and switch gears and talk about Major League Baseball, where the Atlanta Braves will be hosting the Cincinnati Reds earlier today at Truist Park. They were featured on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. Last night, they were able to get the 4-3 victory against the Los Angeles Dodgers to avoid the sweep. Austin Riley had multiple home runs in that game. He had 2 in the game. Bryce Elder pitched well. And the Atlanta Braves right now are 6 back in the NL East from the New York Mets with a 15-18 record. Got a big series with the Cincinnati Reds. I am excited to see the Braves climb out of that hole. Remember, they started 0-7. Look, I know that they should have won against the Dodgers on Friday. They got smoked on Saturday. The Dodgers have the best record in the National League, and they are still the favorites to win the World Series and to go back-to-back. Just looking at the rest of Major League Baseball, you got the Chicago Cubs that's leading the NL Central. They got a 3-game lead over the Reds, so that's why this series with the Braves and Reds is very important, especially for the Reds. But the Chicago Cubs, who have not won a World Series since 2016, I know that there's a lot of Cubs fans out there that got a little greedy when they won that World Series, and they thought with all the pieces they had, like Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, that they would be back just about every year. They were in rebuilding mode. They still have Dansby Swanson. They got him from the Braves. I want to see the Cubs do well. Right now, they're on top of the division. Over in the NL East, the New York Mets got a 2.5-game lead over the Phillies. The Mets, I know some people are hoping that the Mets could start cooling down. This is a team that, it starts out hot out the gate a couple of years ago, and they ended up collapsing and losing that big lead in the division. You got a player like Juan Soto. The Mets are out to try to win now. They have the pieces to try to get it done. Same with the Phillies. The Phillies really spent a lot of money, and their pitching staff has been incredible with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez. I think those big 3 is why the Phillies have had so much success. And it is tough. If you're a Braves fan, the success of the Mets and Phillies has to worry you, because the Braves, remember, they rattled off those 6 straight championships in the NL East, and now all of a sudden the Mets and the Phillies are starting to become relevant. In the NL West, a 3-team race with the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants. The Giants are a game and a half behind the Dodgers. That is going to be an epic race. And you throw in the Padres, it doesn't get any better than that. You move over to the American League, the New York Yankees. They are currently in first place in the AL East. They are 2 games up on the Boston Red Sox. They only have a 19-15 record, but if they get into the postseason, Max Fried has been lights out. He has been their bright spot, and I think he ends up becoming the number 1 starter when they get into the postseason. A very disappointing runner-up finish in the World Series last year. The New York Yankees have not won a World Series since 2009. And then before that, they won a World Series in 2000. So in this century, they only have 2 World Series titles. You compare that to the century before, when they won 26 World Series titles or 25 World Series titles, because I'm counting the 2001. And then in this century, the Boston Red Sox are the team that has the most World Series titles, as they have 4. So, yeah, the Boston Red Sox have owned this century compared to the New York Yankees. So the Yankees, they spend a lot of money, and they want to do well. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, they've got some great pieces, and they just got to find a way to turn it around because, they've lost their last 2. but they're still in first place in the AL East. Now over in the AL Central, the Detroit Tigers, who made the playoffs last year, they want to try to get back to the postseason and show that Detroit sports is back on top again. And you look at what the Pistons did, making it to the NBA playoffs. The Detroit Lions were the overall number one seed in the NFL, in the NFC. And then, of course, Michigan winning the national championship. It just seems like all these Detroit teams, with the exception of the Red Wings, have been having success the last couple of years. And then over in the AL West, the Seattle Mariners got a 2-game lead over the Athletics, who are not affiliated with a city. They play in Sacramento, but they're just simply called the Athletics. And I got to be honest with you, Billy Beane, who was their general manager, he's had some lean years for the Athletics. And sometimes, that gives pressure on the Athletics to do well. They're having a great season. And I know that they're not selling out the games at Sutter Health Park in West Sacramento. That's where the River Cats play in the AAA. But I think that the community of Sacramento, they've embraced the Athletics because I know that it's temporary. They're going to be playing in Vegas in a couple of years. I'm happy to see the Athletics have success. But I tell you what, we have jammed through this part of the show. Why don't we take a break? When we come back, I'm going to talk high school football. The schedules are out for the GHSA. We've got spring practices. We even have some teams that have spring games going on. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live and Sports Vision's 92.1 FM. Back after this.
When you really need something to get you through a long graduation ceremony, Trolley Sour Gummy Worms are there to give you a thrill. With varieties like Trolley Sour Bursting Crawlers, the worm's soft and chewy texture, surprising flavor combinations, and neon bright colors will give everyone a reason to celebrate. So when you want to notch the festivities up a couple degrees, Trolley Sour Gummy Worms are the perfect way for everyone to celebrate. Shop now for any trolley that crawls your way.
We are back here in the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live and Sports Vision's 92.1 FM. You can catch Thrift Barringer and DJ Jones every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on Sports Vision's 92.1 FM, your flagship station for the Columbus Cleanstones. I am just privileged that I'm able to come into the studio every morning for at least an hour just to talk sports with them, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that, as I've been doing this broadcast thing for about 3 years now, pretty much on a full-time basis. Before that, I've had this podcast, and I would periodically do episodes. But it was about 3 years ago that I was really getting into broadcasting, doing Rapids games. It transitioned to the Lions. I've been on other people's podcasts, doing high school football. 2022 was a very good year for me. That was also when I met Thrift Barringer, and we've been working together ever since. It's been a great ride, and I am truly blessed that I'm able to have this platform and to talk sports with you. Had a fun part of the show in the beginning, talking about some of the things that were going on in the world of sports and, internet memes and social media and stuff that's going viral. But let's talk high school football. I'm hoping to get several guests on this show to preview the upcoming high school football season for both Georgia and Alabama. We got spring practices going on in high school football. We got spring games coming up in the next couple of weeks. I know that LaGrange is playing Callaway in a spring game. I know we want to see this game as a regular season game. Callaway is actually going to open the season taking on Prince Avenue Christian in the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic. You look at all the teams down in Columbus. You got all the teams in Region 1, 2A. We get to do this one more year. It has been great having all these teams together in the same region. It was a lot of fun live streaming these games on Georgia Alabama Sports Live last season. The schedule is flipped. So Carver, who hosted Whitewater to start the season, they're actually going to go up to Fayetteville, and they are going to take on Whitewater on August the 15th. That's going to be on a Thursday night. So they will take on Whitewater, the defending 2A state champion Carver Tigers. It's going to look a little different. They're not going to have Justin Newman as their defensive coordinator. By the way, he is now the new head coach at Crisp County. They will travel to Americus to take on Sumter County. If you look at some of the other teams, we have Spencer. Spencer is actually going to open the season taking on Carver in the Heritage Bowl on August the 22nd. But they actually go on the road, taking on Lovett and Griffin. They're back at home at Otis Spencer Stadium on September 25th, taking on Kendrick. Of course, they got to play Shaw. They got to play Columbus, Hardaway. If you look at Hardaway, remember, they got a new head coach, Will Weldon, and they will open up the season against Jackson at Otis Spencer Stadium on August the 16th. Jackson is a 2A school out of Jackson, Georgia. They go on the road to take on Washington at Lakewood Stadium. Washington's a school that's over in Atlanta. They host Greenville at Kinnett Stadium, and then they will take on Shaw at Kinnett Stadium as well. They're going to be hosting Kendrick at Memorial Stadium. This is another football stadium that's not Kinnett or Otis Spencer. They're going to start utilizing Memorial Stadium a lot more, so that's going to be good to see. And then you look at Jordan. They are going to be hosting Chaco on August the 28th at Otis Spencer Stadium. Some of the other notable games, Columbus taking on Hardaway in the Midtown Showdown. This game's going to be at Kinnett Stadium on October the 9th. So I'm excited about that. We were actually at the Midtown Showdown last year. This game is actually going to be on a Thursday night. So that is going to be interesting to see. I'm so excited that high school football is here. I'm telling you, we've got around the state of Georgia, we've got Grayson taking on Collins Hill. Oh, man, that is going to be just an epic game. You look at the team in 5A to beat is Milton. Milton is one of those teams. Remember a couple years ago, Milton won the 7A championship. Well, they get to play Beaufort. So Beaufort is going to take on Milton to start this season. How about that lineup? And I'm looking at some of the other teams like Effingham County taking on Howson County. I think Howson County is going to be a really good team this year. You know, and I'm looking down the schedule. I got the schedule in front of me. Lee County's taking on Warner Robins. Thomas County Central is taking on a Monroe High School out of Tallahassee. And Thomas County Central is always a tough team. Langston Hughes is taking on Westlake. McIntosh taking on Fayette County. We got Northgate taking on Stars Mill. That's going to be a great matchup. But so many great matchups. I can't go through the entire schedule, but I got the GHSA schedule in front of me. It's on their website. Go to ghsa.net and look up the 2025-2026 football schedule. Oh, man, I cannot wait for high school football. Come August, we hit the ground running. We get ready for high school football because we're going to have high school football media days, and then the season will start. Some teams even scrimmage that first weekend in August because once they start practicing, they can start scrimmaging. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Well, this has been a really fun show. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you're able to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. You can catch an episode. I'm found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we will see you next time.